Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Noonchi podcast. So excited to have Fran McMahon with us. She's a content creator and author. Her content called A Healthy Dose of Fran. We'll talk about what that looks like and what she does. But I'm so excited to have her. She's on the other side of the ocean. But thank you for coming, Fran, or Healthy Dose of Fran. So excited to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been absolutely brilliant. I'm so glad to be here.
I love it. And of course, love your accent. So I'm sure you get that a lot, right? Yeah. We're like, keep talking. Let's hear you. So excited to talk about a lot of stuff today and from different perspectives coming from you. So I always like to ask this. First, tell me a little bit about Healthy Dose of Fran and why it's called that. And then we'll talk about your journey in the K-drama world.
All right, awesome. So A Healthy Dose of Fran is my YouTube channel where I produce fan-related content, particularly as of like the last year or so. I've been focusing on my favorite book series, which is the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, and all the stories that come with that. So Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Egyptian mythology, all that sort of fun stuff. And it's just diving into the world of that series and exploring and coming up with fun theories and discussions in relation to that. Alongside it, I've been doing things like Avatar: The Last Airbender, Legend of Korra content. I also post stuff about the different stories that I'm working on as I am an author. So I've recently had a short story of mine that is the first in what is going to be a 3-novel and 4 short story series called the Into the Wild series. That first story is called Echoes of the Past. It is out and it follows the journey of Echo, a lone wolf, trying to find a way to survive in this very dangerous world that animals can live in. And yeah, so that's out and that's being talked about on my channel as well. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've been doing YouTube for like 4 years now, I think. And
wow, you could teach me a thing or two.
Happy to, but you're doing amazing as is, so I think you're good.
Oh, thank you, Fran. But I mean, seriously, so all of the stuff you're talking about, Greek mythology, fantasy, Airbender, and then Percy Jackson, Olympian. Okay, so let's make the connection to K-dramas. I know I had to say interesting, but also it's great to have different tastes, right? So that's super important. So tell me, because I met you through K-dramas and just social media, thank goodness for social media, but tell me a little bit about how you got into Korean dramas or K-pop.
Oh, well, K-pop is, I have a more direct story in that I remember how I got into K-pop. I don't fully remember how I got into K-dramas. So in the case of K-pop, it happened both times through, I got into second generation the first time. It didn't stick fully because I don't know why, it just kind of didn't initially. And I think it was because I was boring and I was very busy and I was just like, yeah, this is really good. And then I forgot how good it was and just kind of like disappeared. I didn't listen to like music properly for like a long while. It was like in the height of my exam season and stuff like that. It just kind of faded away. And then I got to university. It was my final year of university. I met my now best friend, Bronte, who is a huge K-pop and K-drama fan, who introduced me to BTS, Monster X, GOT7, all that sort of stuff. And I've been hooked ever since. And from there, that did actually then introduce me to K-dramas, because I think I was listening to a playlist at some point and I heard one of the OSTs that you usually get from a K-drama. I was like, oh, this is really nice. What's this for? Didn't see, saw the artist name, but saw that it wasn't, connected to the group they're usually a part of. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Went on to Netflix, as we always do, and just kind of started looking some things up. And alongside that, I found what's it called? Good Doctor, which is the original version of what the US show The Good Doctor was based on. And I'd been watching that as well. And I was like, oh, okay, I like Korean music. I don't know the Korean language very well, but I like it all the same. And I'm going to be learning whilst I'm doing it. But I also like this American show. And this was the original. Let's have a look. And now I prefer the original.
That's cool. I mean, what a great story. And I was going to say, it actually, I've heard that for some folks when they really are into K-pop first. And then, of course, they recognize an OST. What was the OST? Do you remember?
I don't actually remember, but
no worries.
Wait, no, hold on. I think I do. I think it was oh god, it was from Something in the Rain, and it was the Henry Lau song.
Okay.
It's You, I think.
Interesting. No. I mean, first of all, the OSTs of the K-dramas are amazing. But that's interesting because I love Something Rain, but I'm trying to pinpoint that song, but I'm sure because I have a huge playlist. But that's awesome.
Wait, was it Something in the Rain? No, I said it. I was like, I feel like I'm lying.
It's totally fine because all of them have good OSTs. but I guess that's cool that that's how you got into it. And of course, your best friend who's totally into Korean drama. So that said,
Yes.
it sounds like The Good Doctor was your first one.
Yes, my first
Okay.
official that I remember. I
Right,
feel like I
sure.
possibly watched something before because I've always ended up doing that. I was like, this looks interesting, click on it, and
Yeah.
it ended up being in a different language. I was like, oh, that's unexpected. I'm gonna watch it anyway. But
Yeah.
so I probably have watched one in the past and just don't have any recollection of it. But
No
that was
worries,
definitely
but
the
that's
first one
good
I
that you
remember.
remember The Good Doctor.
Mm.
And then, so let's talk about your K-drama journey then. So then that's how we
Yes.
technically met. What are some of the K-dramas? Let's start off with specifically that you've watched that impacted you and stayed with you, because I know we've had this conversation, but I'd love to hear about it. And then one of the things that I love talking about is how K-dramas affect not just our mental health, but our identity. So I'd love to hear about that on your perspective.
Oh, for sure. So Good Doctor was the one that I watched for first, but I didn't actually watch another K-drama for like a year and a half afterwards. I don't really know why, but it just kind of, I think I was like, when you're young and you're trying to find work and like, oh my God, I'm unemployed. What am I going to do?
Sure.
So I was, the anxiety of that was kind of like taking over. But when I kind of got into a good place and the pandemic hit and everything was in hell, I had some time to kind of really find some things to watch. So I got into Crash Landing on You. Obviously is a little bit before the pandemic, but slightly
but right around then, yeah, the beginning.
The big border. And then there was also Run On, It's Okay to Not Be Okay, and it's not okay. Wait, hold on. It's okay to not be okay. There's too many okays. It's very.
I know, it's too many.
That was the one that made the first big impact on me as a show, because it was the first that I saw, both in like Korean and like Western, like US, UK media, that really confronted mental health and like the trauma of past and PTSD and all these sort of things, like head on, like no holding back whatsoever. And it stuck with me a lot because I was currently, whilst I was watching that at the time, I was going through therapy for a flare up of my PTSD, which was kind of coming in through the pandemic. And so I was watching that and I was going to therapy at the same time, and they were both in a sense very therapeutic, but in no offense to my therapist, because they were awesome and I really appreciate them, It's Okay to Not Be Okay helped more, I feel, in me kind of coming to terms with like my own struggles in relation to what was happening, because it was seeing so many people with so many different conditions and so many different life experiences dealing with it in the way that they could, and having someone help them through it, even if it was just like a kind word here or there, or just finding their own way to cope in ways that sometimes weren't always the most healthy, but sometimes were healthy in other ways. And it just kind of, it just really stuck with me as something like, oh no, I can find a way to like be healthy for myself and find ways to help cope in a way, especially during a pandemic when there's not really any of the comforts that you usually have to be able to help are accessible. So it helped me find new ways to look after myself and make sure I was doing okay.
Well, yeah, it's okay to not be okay. And you were doing okay. Wow, you said something very, I want to say poignantly, as a therapist, of course I endorse it when you said it helped you more. No, like downplaying the therapy that you got, right? Obviously, but as a therapist, that's why I look at K-dramas, because they can be very impactful, right? And thank you for sharing about just how your PTSD was re-triggered. And I want to say for a lot of folks just that might have been struggling with mental illness or mental health conditions, the pandemic did quite a bit, right? So you're not alone in that. And that's why K-dramas just kind of went up, with just the viewership went up, right? So then after It's Okay to Not Be Okay, and by then you were like, wow, they're really facing mental illness, mental health straight on. What are some other K-dramas that have impacted you? Because I know we've talked about it, but I'd love for you to share, and specifically on who you are or who you're trying to become or who you want to be, right?
So there are definitely different ones. So I kind of have like a broad spectrum of the different kinds of K-dramas that I watch.
I love your broad range. I love it.
Yeah. But I'm also one of the ones that I'm a huge sucker for anything that has romance related. Even if it does remind me that I'm perpetually single, I still enjoy them.
Because we aspire to have those romantic relationships,
exactly,
right?
Yeah. Who doesn't want, someone to like whip you out of the way of the road when you're about to be hit by a car? It probably won't help because I am very clumsy, so I probably still get hit by the car, but it's still drama either way.
Exactly.
Then the dramatic moment of them being like, no, Like, yeah, no, that's what I want. I want someone to be like hysterically sobbing because I've been injured, even if it's just a paper cut. Give it to me. I need this emotional. I need this emotional.
I love that. I love that. But you're right. Those big dramatic moments in the romances that were like, oh, but it's, that's why this is why we watch it, because we just like seeing that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And the one that kind of like a few that stood out to me in relation to that kind of gave me sort of those happy moments is weightlifting fairy Kim Bok-joo, because of the
you're like, I watched it like this.
Yes, because it's so sweet, but it's also so hilarious because like the romantic moments are just that they're the best subversion of that, the whole scene of like he moves her in front of the puddle to keep himself dry and she gets splashed, like legendary. And 100% something that would either happen to me or I would do.
Oh yeah. I love it.
And just things like that. So just like that heartwarming sort of feeling that you get from K-dramas as well, through the comedy, the romance, and even the drama sometimes as well, because seeing someone so passionate and like the intensity of that drama that you're seeing from someone, of like either this intense care that they have for someone, that they're afraid for them and all these sort of things, or just like in the nicest way, when someone's life is really bad and it makes you feel good because it's like, at least that's not my life. That's kind of like the vibe.
I'm glad you pointed that out. That's another reason why people watch them. They kind of realize, wow, I don't have it that bad. I should appreciate my life more. I mean, do you know what I mean? Because we see these dramatized stories of, I don't know, despair in some of these K-dramas, which there's so many, right? But that's a good perspective. So I'm going to point that out. Thanks for sharing that. What else? What else? So weightlifting Kim Bok-joo, yes. Weightlifting fairy Kim Bok-joo, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. And then there are just a few others that like even ones I've seen recently. Like I watched Her Private Life recently. Unexpected like love for the series, because I wasn't, it was just such a like out of place premise. Like I wasn't expecting the premise itself, and then as it carried on I was like, oh, this is even better. And the occasional drama thrown in, it's like, oh my god, okay. But then also the miscommunication of like him believing that her and her best friend are actually a secret like lesbian couple, and him,
I love it. And he was actually legendary. Supportive too. It was like kind of like, okay, let me just give them space. Yeah, that was a funny scene.
I think the best scene from that is just like him seeing them and really like remembering what the friend said of like, do you ever have that feeling of not being able to be with someone that you want to be with so bad and you just want to be near them? And then he sees them together and he's like, I assumed she was heterosexual. I'm the worst kind of person in this world. And it's like, oh my god, this man is woke and we love him for it. He knows what's up. He's like, oh my god, I cannot believe that my heteronormative societal view has destroyed the image that I have of these women, and I ruined their evening because they're so in love and I took it away from them. I'm awful. And it was just,
that's awesome pointing that out. You're right. He was very like, oh my gosh, right? And and I know we talk about representation, so we'll talk more about that. But this is why I love talking to guests, because they remind me of scenes that I kind of forget, and that was a good scene. Yeah.
And it just stood out to me because like that was a show from 2019. Yeah. And like there are so many more shows that I've like from like a couple of years ago that do have, even if it's like small little bits of representation for queer audiences, for me as like a queer woman, I pick up on them instantly. I'm like, wow, like even these small little things, like that's more representation than I've seen in like years in some cases. And it's amazing. Like, and there's more coming out every year. Like there's a new one coming out just like weekly currently, which is oh god, what's it called? Business Proposal, I think it's called. Like there's only 2 episodes.
It. Oh, and it has representation in there?
Kind of. There's like a hint. So it's not like full representation, but it's like there was like a casual mention of like someone saying, if you two are gay, that's cool, just date, just don't pretend sort of situation. And they'd be like, we're not, but if I was, this guy wouldn't be my type anyway. So it was kind of like a casual sort of thing, and it wasn't even though it's not kind of technically representation, it was nice all the same, because it wasn't that moment that you usually get in like US shows where someone gets so offended for being assumed to be gay sort of situation, which still happens now, which is interesting that
you point that out. Because, right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I guess you're saying
it's all good.
You like the So I'll have you keep talking about just representation, but you're saying it's not as like in your face, but well done, like kind of intricately, kind of interweaved well into the story is what I'm hearing you're saying. Like you'd like seeing that part of it. I got to see that. It just started, right? Business Proposal. As of our conversations. So I haven't started it because there's so many to watch, but yeah.
Okay. And a minute, it's a week. It's like a 2 episode a week release. Yes. And I was like, so I've only watched the first episode because then I found out it was like a 2 episode a week release. I was like, oh, I physically cannot put myself through that. I have to wait until at least a few more hours.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard.
It's so hard. But yeah, so it was only in the first episode. It was just this small little line of like, if you are gay, that's cool. Yeah. And just seeing that, I was like, I love that. Like they weren't gay, which also I was kind of like, damn. But
that's awesome.
But it was like, you're a main lead. I get it because female main lead as well. So it was fair enough. But also just the fact it's there and the fact that they're not up, like there's like a whole scene was like when the other guy who is like his secretary says, he wouldn't be my type anyway. The main lead gets really upset. It's like, what do you mean I wouldn't be your type? I'm everyone's type. And so just that I kind of love that because like that's so refreshing because too often there are so many scenes in UK US television, I mean not as many now as they were like a few years ago and stuff, of when someone assumes you're gay, that's a bad thing. And the fact that this didn't happen here was brilliant. I love that. I was like, yes, no, we love the casual. It's just like the openness, sort of like, no, I should be your type. Why wouldn't I be your type? Like, how dare you say this about me?
Normalizing that. And that's super important for representation. So I love that. So now you piqued my interest to watch it because we are seeing that more in K-dramas. I know you can list more and I want you to keep going because we want to point this out, just how you've perceived things in a K-drama that really hit you and that really, I guess, what's the word? Validate your experience 100%. And who you are is very good for our mental health, right?
Definitely. And I've had that with a lot, considering like I only really kind of got into K-dramas during the pandemic, just being like, God, these last 2 years.
Right. But it's a long 2 years.
Long 2 years. But I've only got into them in the last 2 years, and nearly all of the K-dramas I've seen in these last 2 years have some form of LGBT representation. So you've got Run On, you've got 2 characters, both side characters, but 2 characters who are queer. They're both
okay. And I still have not seen Run On. I know. I just bypassed Run On because there's so many other stuff to watch. But
that is fair
things. Yeah.
Yes, I was gonna say I would recommend it. It's very much that sort of fluffy, sort of go lucky.
I've heard it was. Yeah, I heard it was. Yeah.
There is some like drama moments because I know there's like one of the characters who is one of the queer characters is someone who is being beaten up by his peers and stuff like that, but not because he's gay, but because he's better than them. Because he is a track star with them, and because another person is better than them as well, so they take it out on him because he's younger.
Gotcha.
So that was already like an immediate subversion, because like you get the hints that he is a queer character like from the get-go, and he has a bit of a crush on the main lead. And when there was this whole hint of like him being beaten, I was like, oh God, are they going to have it as that the reason he's being beaten is because he's gay? And quite openly, like he makes comments about him being attractive and all these sort of things, like very openly sort of situation. And I was like, oh no, is this, and then it wasn't even remotely about him being gay, nothing to do with it whatsoever, which was a real surprise for me, because usually in like UK US media, if someone is gay and they're being beaten up, it is because they're gay that they are being beaten up. That is the only reason you'll be being beaten up.
That is great to point out.
Yeah, and it was something that really surprised me, so it took me aback that wasn't the reason he was being beaten. Obviously still awful that he's being beaten, it's a queer character being beaten, but and so it sounds weird. I'm just like, oh, I'm so glad, but not obviously. You don't
want to see beaten up, but for the reasons were not, which was refreshing to see.
Yes, because it was just, it was because my immediate thought went to, it's gonna be because he's gay. Like, that was my immediate thought process because of what I've seen in the past, and the fact that that wasn't the case was just brilliant. And then you've got another character who has like an unrequited love towards like a male friend who confesses and all these sort of things, and is just kind of really open about it, and the friend is not like put out by it. It's like, and he apologizes to him. It's like, I'm really sorry, I don't return your feelings, but I hope we'll still be friends and stuff like that.
Right, like, instead of being completely like aghast with horror and or
that's like being uncomfortable. And I thought it was the fact that he kind of apologizes, like, I'm really sorry that I don't return your feelings, was something that was just really sweet to see, because you don't really get things like that. Just kind of like, oh, you get the oh, thanks. And then that's kind of it.
Yeah.
In fact, he's just like, thank you, and I'm really sorry that I can't return them. I just thought it added that additional sort of weight to the situation. I thought it was just a really lovely sort of situation. And there's just been loads of things like that, just small little bits here and there, like even in Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha had that like complete subversion of what everyone was thinking because of this character. And you I was going to say your face knew straight away. I was like, oh yes, this one. I was like, yep, that one, because no one was expecting it until there was like, I think there was one episode where like she was looking at the female character and I was like, that's gay. Yeah, that's a gay look. Right. This is a huge homosexual right here. Because
it was later on in the series, right? When I was like, oh, it's not what we all thought. It's her, right? And I, just like you're talking about with Run-On, since I didn't see it and I saw this one, obviously I really liked the way she handled it when she's like, I like you, Annie. And she's like, I knew that all along, right? Yeah. And she I already knew it. And she's like, you did, but there was no semblance of like, I understood, but obviously I couldn't return the feeling. Same way that Run-On sounds like they had handled it. Yeah, very well. And done. I thought it was incredibly well done. And I mean, I this is half because I am gay and I'm always looking for gay things in media. Is that I kind of got the hints like a little bit early on with some of the interactions, but only because I was like, please. That was literally it. It was because I was like, come on, do it. Come on. Oh, subvert this. So it was more me kind of like assuming it's like maybe this is going to be the case. And then when it happened, it was like, oh, I didn't actually expect that, but that's awesome. I see. Yeah, of course, because you're looking at it from your perspective. Yeah, no, I think I think we were all speculating as viewers. We're like, what's that? What's the love triangle? What's that? What's the secret? Why did they get divorced? Right. But it was a pleasant surprise because it was, like I said, not even a pleasant surprise. It was just very well done. So it was just part of the story and just emotional as every part of that story was. Right. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with that one. Now, are there others that you also really enjoyed watching that you thought this was also well done? Because you said almost every K-drama you've seen has that representation. Yes. So the other one, which is the bigger one, that kind of really got me to, in a sense, immediately after I finished watching that K-drama, I looked up what other gays are in K-dramas. Just I looked for a list. Basically, that was kind of the final thing. I was like, okay, this is the 4th time now. All right, we're gonna watch something else. Yeah, which find more. So this was Nevertheless. One that I did not finish. Yeah, I was gonna say, I tell this to everyone. Nevertheless is great, but only for the 15 minutes, which is Sol and Jabon. Yes, I was going to say, and I knew what you were talking about. And I heard, of course, about it, and I could see it. The main lead and Oh no, I was skipping through it. I'm going to be brutally honest. For anyone who likes Nevertheless, no offense intended. No offense. Yeah, but I skipped through everything to do with the main lead and the main female because I was like, I am not about this heterosexual nonsense. Give me Sol and Jewel. I agree. I was like, this is nonsense. Yeah. But let's talk about that. Yeah, what? And you said that was a big one. And you said, it's so funny, you said 15 minutes, but I meant big one. How, like, as an impact is what I'm saying to you. That must have been really impactful for you. Oh, it was hugely impactful because it was something I was not remotely expecting. Like going into it, like the hints are there from episode 1, which is something I didn't remotely expect in general. Because like the few that I had seen, like even Run-On, you get a few little hints, but you don't really kind of see anything further. And that's kind of, then the other character is like near the end of the series. Yeah. And the few other cases were obviously like her private life. The joke's kind of there from the start-ish, but not fully. But this is the first one where you're getting further hints, and like there's more skinship, there's more sort of discussion of their relationship, and it seems a little bit deeper than anything you've seen previously, and it just keeps going and going. Like there's more deeper, there's something more about it, and the fact that they were being focused on like these 2 female leads as part of, like, I guess you would call it like this sort of C plot. So you've got the A plot of toxic mess, you've got the B plot of secondary toxic mess, but a little bit better, and you got C plot of my lesbians. You're so funny because you're talking like an author. I'm like, C, A, B, C. Well, okay, but I see your point now. I see how it's all divided up. Yeah, into a story. Yeah, so I realized that I was very much a technical term there, but yeah. So the mains,
secondary mains and then sort of like the side characters sort of situation. Of like who's kind of getting more screen time of their relationship sort of situation. And considering they were, in a sense, like the C-plot, they were the secondary or even third level characters in the show, their story was the one that stood out the most to me. And before anyone says, it's not just because they were gay, it's not because of that, it's because it was a beautiful friends to lovers storyline that kind of, in comparison to other ones, it didn't feel like it kind of came out of nowhere. The hints and the examples and the depth of their relationship is there from the get-go. Like the way in which they interact with each other, the sort of holding things back from sort of like the fear of kind of hurting Jawan, of her possibly going abroad to study further and not wanting to hurt her because she cares about her so much, and like the closeness that they have with each other, that's all there from episode 1, and it just it continues on. And the fact that they were getting so much screen time of their relationship, and the only other relationships that were getting this big screen time were romantic relationships, kind of gave me that pause of like, wait, hold on, are we actually getting like main screen time for a queer relationship? And because I couldn't fully believe it, because like that doesn't like happen often. Like usually these have been like 4 side characters, they're kind of just there, they don't really have any involvement in the main plot or anything like that. But this time they were involved in the main plot. They had their own dramas for their story. And it was brilliant just seeing it all unfold, which is why I kept going back. The show wasn't that great, but I kept going back for Sol and Jiwon because their story was a thing that was kind of keeping me going, in a sense, like both in terms of like my mental health, of kind of finding like love and happiness in it, and seeing this beautiful relationship and its development from like friends to a sort of like anxiety of moving to that next step, and
which
then
is so legit. It's very realistically done, right? So it's like that's very. I see that in my work, that progression of like, we're entering this territory, but we have these feelings. You said something important, and I didn't mean to interrupt you because I want you to talk about it as you're going through it. You said for your mental health, how was it beneficial as you're watching this?
I think for me, it was seeing such a healthy, like open relationship between these two characters. And as someone who has like unfortunately been in like toxic and like not abusive but like borderline relationships in the past, seeing for the first time something that was just so like wholesome in its appearance, because obviously it's realistic to show like the issues that you have in relationships, stuff like that, but in most cases when we do get queer relationships, it's usually angst filled. There's nothing really consistently positive and wholesome of queer relationships in media, particularly in the UK and US. So seeing this relationship that, yes, it had its dramas of like them not being able to fully admit their feelings for each other, and them kind of struggling to figure out where their relationship would go, and that anxiety behind it. Everything else was just this wholesome sort of situation of them. The reason why they were so nervous was because of how much they cared about each other, and this fear of losing that relationship. Which,
so it wasn't too much of being gay, like, oh my goodness, it was more about just their feelings for each other individually, right? Like not focusing on their actual gender identity and it being all about them. That was the shift, I want to say, it was what I'm hearing.
Yes, for sure. So it was both that, and also just seeing them just kind of just their care for each other on this deep level. Like even though they have like the whole miscommunication sort of situation that goes on, but obviously that's a brilliant trope, I love it so much. But
it's a brilliant trope,
so good. But like all these sort of things that you do see in some like UK and US media with queer relationships, this was the first one that it just, the drama that was there for them wasn't drama that's like kind of hurt the audience at the same time, because it was messy. Like usually in the media that I have seen, it's messy for the sake of being messy, whereas in Nevertheless and with Sol and Jiwon, it felt more realistic, the drama of just like this whole situation of like, you're going from like friends who have been like best friends since middle school. I don't know what ages that is, because we don't have that in Britain. I think that's
12
like
to 14, 12? Like 12 to 14.
Gotcha. And they're obviously in university now, so that's like a decade plus maybe long friendship, and going from like moving away from that into something possibly more, it's always nerve-wracking, like for anyone, like
Yes.
straight, bi, gay, whatever.
Yeah.
It's always going to be a difficult transition. And the
Mhm.
fact that that was the focus of just like this difficultness and not anything to do with like their sexuality or anything to do with just, you know, them causing drama for themselves. Like I'm trying to think of like an example in Western media where that's happened, where I think like there's like cheating situations. There's usually
Mhm.
just like a family who are causing the problems of like, oh,
Sure.
it's them or us sort of situation. There's
Yes.
nothing like that of like
Nothing like that.
external problems. It was more internal of feelings and kind of not really knowing where this relationship is going. It felt so much more refreshing than the usual dramas that you get in
Yeah.
Western queer media.
I would say I can hear that in your voice too, and seeing you animated talking about it, that it was a very healthy representation for you that made a difference. So giving you that aspirational hope that you can find that, right?
Yes.
We should
Yes.
always have that. I think our goal should always try to be, of course, we want to seek healthy relationships. That doesn't always happen to be the case, but we can at least hope for that and like kind of navigate it. But thanks for sharing that. So I guess you've seen quite a bit. So then now I guess to just kind of bookend things, how is this affecting watching these K-dramas and being the creative that you are and an author? How has it impacted your creativity, your work? You know, how do you translate some of this very different culture to what you're doing now?
Well, the way in which I kind of like take in media is that I overanalyze everything. Um, like I can't help myself. Like if there's something to be analyzed, I'm already doing it.
Well, you know me
If there's
too. I
something,
do that. I'm like, oh, let me think about what they mean by that.
yeah, no, I'm pretty sure like my mum watches the K dramas with me, not by choice. It's more I've got it in the main room. She's there, so she just sits in. But because she's in the room with me, when something happens, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I will pause it, turn to her and explain my thoughts and reasoning for what is happening. It's like, oh, okay, so this character here, this is the situation that's going on, but actually I think this may be the actual underlying situation, and this is what I think is probably going to be happening later. And she's there just like, okay.
She's like, okay, Fran, thanks.
Yeah. I wish it was only for K-dramas. I do it with everything, every media I watch. If there's something I'm like, oh, this is interesting, I will pause it and tell whoever is in the room my thoughts. They
Sure,
don't
that's
want
good.
them, but
Even if they
but
don't,
I'm
even if
doing
they
it
don't
anyway.
want them, you're going to do it anyway. It just helps
Oh
you,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's very much that thing. It's like I have this like almost like compulsion where like I have this thought of this media, and if I don't say it to someone, it's going to annoy me that I haven't said it out loud, because I kind of need to say it, because it's just something like I can't not analyze media, even
Sure.
if it's reading a book. Sometimes I'll stop reading this chapter like, oh, this has just happened, oh my god, I wonder what's going to sort of situation. Like everything, even with my own books, I've done it as well. It's like, oh mum, I've just written this in this book and this character's died, and it's like, oh my god, I don't like, I'm so emotional about this. I know I did it, but still.
Well, I mean, that's good. You're really getting invested, right? Emotionally invested in that. And that's, yeah. And then you love your work, obviously, the creativity. So,
For
mhm.
sure. And it kind of, it leads to me just wanting to like take in more of it, because it does inspire the way in which I'm writing. Like I'm currently writing at the moment like a new book that's not connected to the Into the Wild series. It's very different. It's a romantic comedy that I'm working on, and a lot of the like, rom-coms that I've been watching in K-dramas have inspired me to get into like the right mood for writing a rom-com, kind of taking the sort of right tropes that you kind of see of it, of like the miscommunication, the fake dating, all that sort of stuff. Just kind of take
The
the one
contract
bed
marriage.
situation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh god, yeah, everything is is inspiring me at the moment of kind of how to work this into this story. And if I'm not in the right mood, I will throw on, even if it's like a rom-com I've watched before of a K-drama, I will throw it back on just to kind of get some more inspiration behind it, because there's just something about them. There's just so much to them that's just so sweeping with the romance, and just like you want to be swept off your feet, and that happens in K-dramas just watching them. And it definitely inspires the way in which I've written my work. And yeah, I don't even know how to like describe it. It's just seeing it and just seeing how these characters interact has helped me figure out how to get my characters to interact in a way that kind of makes them both their own like original people. They're not kind of sort of carbon copies of each other. And the relationship as well. It's a lot of fun.
I love that. I love that you turn on, what's your go-to? Do you have a go-to, or you just turn on whatever the ones you've watched?
So my go-to is usually W, Two Worlds Apart.
Oh, W. Yeah. W.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen it in so long.
Yeah. Even
Okay.
though it breaks my heart every time, which is like, I need to.
It's a
I
little
need to.
dramatic too, though, right? W.
Yeah.
I got a little scared in some of the parts, not even scared, but you know what I mean? Like, ugh,
Yeah.
you
It's like,
know?
oh my God, sort of situation. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Oh, I do miss the main lead. Lee Jong Suk. I haven't seen, we'll see him soon, but he's out of the, he was in the army for a little bit and now he's back. But
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
that's a good one. That's interesting that you turn on that one. Okay. Huh.
Yeah. I think it's the one that kind of like outside of some of the others had like another like impact on me, because like I finished the show at 4 o'clock in the morning, hysterically sobbing. I like the last 2 episodes, just like, whoa,
I'm trying to
what
remember
have
the
I
last two
done?
episodes without spoiling it. Okay, I remember the last two episodes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that was the situation. So I was like, okay, I know I've really enjoyed this one, because like it had this impact that I was like, I can't stop. I've got 4 episodes left. I need to watch these episodes to find out what's happening.
Yeah.
And then I only half regretted it because I had to get up at like 6 o'clock the next day. So I was
Right.
like, an
I
hour
know we've all
sleep.
had those moments. But what was the most emotional? Like you said, 4 episodes left. You got so emotional. What was it about? I mean, without giving away the storyline, but that's been 4 years since people have been out. We could say it, but what was it that gripped you so much?
So it was the depth of the relationship between the two main characters. Like I feel like their love story was one that kind of really gripped me. Like I love all the love stories that have happened in the ones that I've seen, like it's the one in Run On, even Crash Landing on You, like all incredible romances. But the intensity of the romance in W was the one that I think just gripped me the most, because it was the additional heartbreak in the fact that like he's technically not real, but
Yeah.
he is real at the same time, and obviously does. I won't spoil that bit, but I know
Right.
but it's good, so people go watch it. But also,
Yeah,
but there was
no.
just something about it, just like these added layers of the complexities of their relationship, and
Sure.
just the depth behind it, and sort of the angst and the hurt behind the possibilities that they may not be able to be together because of how this world works.
Right.
And it was just so intense that you couldn't kind of stop watching,
You're
because
right.
you
You're bringing me
wanted.
back now. I do remember that
Mm,
particular scene too. That was pretty intense for that realization. Yeah, yeah. I'm just, oh
mm.
gosh, way to bring me back. But that's a great one. I'm so glad you mentioned that one, just the intensity. And so you're all about love. I mean, we all should be about
Yeah,
love. I mean, it's nice, right? To be loved and to
exactly.
love others.
100%.
Well, anyways, as we're wrapping up, I always like to ask my guests, any last minute words that you want to share when it comes to everything we've talked about, particularly K-dramas, identity, mental health, being queer,
Mm.
all of that. What do you want to say?
um I guess I sort of like a final thing, just seek out the media that you know will represent you in some way, even if it's not always the best representation. Finding something that you can see yourself in is probably the greatest experience you can ever have. And for someone who's queer, it's not always been the most common thing that I've been able to get, but just seeking out, like I did, like after seeing Nevertheless, and being like, I need to find more things with Sol and Jiwon like characters. And that led me down like this rabbit hole of finding more media that like has, even if it's small representation, it's still there. Doing
Hmm.
something like that to kind of get that comfort for you of the things that you enjoy. So for example, if you are African American or Black British and you want to see more characters like yourself in media, you can look these things up and you can find it. Possibly won't always be the best representation, as I have heard from like some of my Black friends, but you can find things like that. And I've heard that things have been improving. Obviously, in the case of queer like representation in K-dramas, that's been improving a lot in recent years. And even some of the older ones that I've seen, they've not always been like the worst representation, not always the best, but it's been there, even if it's not always been there in the best of lights. And yeah, seek it out, see how how you'll feel afterwards, because like honestly, it was such an incredible feeling for me to see Song and Jawan and their relationship and them ending up together happy without any real fears of the world around them. And yeah, it's just a great experience, so seek it out if you can.
I love that advice. Yes. Thank you for sharing that, seeking that out for the sake of validating you and who you are
Mm.
and what you want to see. So, Fran, this was an amazing conversation. So glad we had it. Thank you so much for joining me. And I can't wait to have you
course.
back.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
I was like, what's she gonna say? What? Okay, well, I'll see you soon. Thanks for joining me.
No worries. Bye.